Today's project is we're looking to modify the tractor a little bit to give ourselves a little bit better stability on some of these steep hills around our property. Down around the pond we have about a 25 or 30 degree incline in some places. And on the tractor, you're sitting on there. You can definitely feel it starting to slide over a little bit. The last thing I want to do is dump it into the pond or roll it on myself. Now this tractor's got a front end loader on it, so we don't have front ballast weights because the loader is kind of taking care of that. And on the back end we'll have either the sickle mower or some kind of brush hog or something running. So we've got enough weight on it, and really what we're looking to do is increase the overall width, give ourselves a little bit stabler stance. And one of the first things you come across on forums is people flipping the wheels around on the tractor, which I think is probably the first step you do. You can go from an outside stance to kind of an inside and give yourselves a couple more inches that way. One of the other options people discuss is looking to put on like hub extenders or wheel spacers, something to give your tractor a few more inches on either wheel to give yourself a little bit more stability. Now, when you go out and look on Amazon or a lot of these farm/tractor supply stores, these hub extenders can get pretty expensive, especially for the compact tractor class, just because it's a little bit more of a specialty than what you might find on some of the big tractors in the fields. So I mean, you're looking at between $200 to $600 depending on how wide you want to go. At least in my case, I want to go as wide as I feasibly can without breaking anything, just to give myself as much stability as possible. So in doing some research and things, I located the technical service manual for the tractor. That's usually my first start when I'm kind of trying to look at these vehicle modifications or things. And one of the simplest things in there they talk about is the overall dimensions of the tractor and what the different wheel stances will do to that. Now, if you do the factory default wide stance where the wheels are mounted inverse, where you have a concave shape when you're looking at the wheel, where it's actually pushed outwards on the wheel when you're looking at the side of the tractor. So the default stance is something like, I think it was 67-inch wide with R1s, like ag tires on it. You can go wider than that by actually mounting the wheel separately from the center disc of the wheel, the rim versus the center disc. There's different bolt patterns. And in doing so, you can actually achieve an additional 7 to 8 inches of width, which is equivalent to like 4-inch spacers that you would have purchased anyways. So I wanted to give this a try, see what the stability is, see if I get a benefit in kind of the hillside performance of the tractor. So that's what today's project is. It's a free thing to try. If it doesn't work, then maybe I'll pursue the spacers in the future, but might as well try the free things first, right?
So the first step of this project is going to be to take the wheels off the tractor. I've got a John Deere 3520, and that has an 8x8 lug pattern on the wheel. And essentially that means 8 lugs around an 8-inch diameter there. These, I think, use a 22 millimeter socket to pop these off, so I'll hit that with the impact driver. And I'm doing this to get access to the backside of these carriage bolts. These carriage bolts are what hold the wheel onto the rim, and I could probably get to them from the backside, but with the tools I have available to me, I think it's going to be easier to just take the whole wheel off and access it on the ground. So this is a view of the back side of the wheel that we had taken off. I've already taken a few of those carriage bolts out, but I wanted to show you what it looks like. So this is using a 24 millimeter socket that I admit I had to use a breaker bar and extension with in order to just free up before hitting it with the impact wrench. All in all, I mean, they don't look like they're in bad shape. The plating and everything on the carriage bolt looks good, so it's not like it's seized. I think it's just torqued tight enough, and then after years of use has probably tightened itself further. So anyways, I use a breaker bar to get those popped apart before hitting them with the impact. Like I said, that's a 24 millimeter socket on there to do that. So you'll see I've got the wheel set up on some 4x4 blocks. I'm doing this just to give my arm some room that I can reach from below and actually push the carriage bolts up and get them positioned into the square holes of the rim. Oftentimes, if you're working by yourself, it's better to, work smarter than harder. So doing little things like this can oftentimes make your job just a little bit easier. To give you guys a quick look at the potential increase in width overall that you can get out of your tractor. So this is kind of like how my tractor was originally set up. Obviously I've gotten it already kind of pulled apart, but just as a frame of reference, if we're sticking this down, outside of my wheel to the hub, or outside of the tire to the hub, is about 9 inches. Now if I go to the other configuration that I'm going to move to, I've got the wheel placed on the inside of the rim, and the rim is at its widest position. So you can see I've got a little different configuration here. And if I go down and touch to where the outside of the rubber is to the surface of the hub, we're at 13 inches. So, with doing a swap like this, I've gained about 4 inches of spacing on one tire, giving me a combined 8 inches that I had assumed I would get. So I think I'm going to go with it. I think it's probably better at this point to go wider than narrower. And if I find that it's too cumbersome to get through the woods or something with it in a wide stance, I can always drop it back slightly and actually mount the wheel just on the inside of the surface down here. These ribs on the rim are about 1 inch thick. So if I mount the wheel on the inside of that rib, I could decrease my spacing to about 3 inches with a combined overall spacing or wheel width increase of about 6 inches. So I wanted to point out something that I came across as I was going for this widest stance configuration. The location of my wheel weight, as it corresponds to my tire stem, it creates pretty small clearance for me to get a filler in there. And I've got steel stems on my wheel currently. If you had the rubber stems, you might be able to kind of flex this out of the way. But at least in my setup, I wouldn't be able to get my filler on there. So what I ended up doing is I ended up taking advantage of the fact that you could mount the wheel on the inside of this rim rib, and that gave me just enough clearance that I can get my filler in there. I'll show you on this side. So I know it looks tight, but I confirmed that if I can bring this in still, I can still pop it on there easy enough and get pressure to it. So just something to take into consideration as you're doing this for yourself. Additionally, if you don't have the wheel weights like I do, I don't think you'd run into this problem, and you probably could go to the full wide. But at least for me, I had to step it back 1 inch. So instead of the 8 inches overall that I was hoping to get, I'm going to be more at 6 inches. I still think it's an improvement considering it's a free change to the tractor. But like I said, just something to keep in mind. All right, so I wanted to give a quick rundown of what it looks like when we're putting the wheel back together. I've already completed one side, and as I mentioned, I had to go to a little bit different stance than what I had originally intended, and that was just because of where the tire stem was located. So here I am, I've got the wheel on the one side of the rim rib, and what I'm doing is I'm feeding the carriage bolts from underneath, or because I've got my tire up on the blocks, I'll feed them under this way, and I can kind of quickly hit it with my impact wrench. Something that I came across that wasn't something I had anticipated was that the wheel weight diameter was actually greater than the inside diameter of the rim ribs.
So although it all goes back together all right, you couldn't just like pass the wheel weight through. So it's only 4 bolts to take it off. I think this is a 75 or 80 pound wheel weight. So it's actually to my advantage to take it off. Just makes it a little less cumbersome. So I'll get these all back together. I'll get the wheel weight installed back on the other side and placed back on the tractor, and I'll show you what it all looks like when it's back. So what I've done is I've flipped the wheel back over, so now I'm working on the opposite side of what I had just shown. And like I said, I mean, you're essentially just passing these carriage bolts through it. Make sure everything's kind of aligned, and that's why you're working from the opposite ends. And you can put these 4 carriage bolts in from all different, or from these 4 sides. Pretty simple, but like I said, it's not something I had originally anticipated having to do. I thought that the wheel weight would just pass through cleanly, but unfortunately there was just too much interference to actually get it through. So we'll do this real quick. And I'm not really hammering these down at this point. You know, I'm just trying to get them snugged up, and once we get all 4 of them in here, then I can come back around and really put some juice on them. And it's not like this is a race car. It's not gonna, these wheels aren't spinning that fast, especially the wheel weight. It's not something that the wheel weight itself is experiencing any real torque on it, like what the rim and the wheel is against the hub. So it's not super critical that these are torqued to some particular spec, but still good to make sure that they're good and tight. So here it is, all done and wrapped up. We've got both wheels repositioned, kind of reconfigured on here. What we measured in the end was like 65 3/4, so not an exact 6-inch increase by doing both those configurations, but you know, 5 3/4 inches greater than where it had been. So I think I'm pleased with it, given that again it was a free modification. It took a couple hours of time just, you know, learning the process and whatnot, but I'm going to go give it a try out on the hills, see how it feels. But my hope is that with the increased width, the stance of the tractor overall is going to feel better and a little bit more stable on the hillside. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.